Right, so I made a video about simple periodization. I think most people sort of understood that it was quite a simple way of doing it, quite easily laid out, where you just do 3 sets of 5 reps 1 week, next week is 3 sets of 4, next week 3 sets of 3, next week 3 sets of 2. Then you do a deload, and then you increase the weight slightly if it's all been manageable, and you run the same process again. Now, I've got an even simpler way of doing it than that. So I would always recommend doing a deload every 4, 5 or 6 weeks. So if your recovery's not quite so good, 3 weeks of going hard, then a deload. If it's slightly better, 4 weeks, then a deload. And if you're really lucky and your recovery's great, then 5 weeks and a deload would be very good to do. Obviously, signs that you need a deload: sleep's disrupted, not progressing, feeling fatigued all the time. These sort of things are things that you need to sort of obviously look out for, and that's a good sign that you need a deload. But anyway, I'm going to give you a simpler way of periodizing your strength training. So you do have to have a rough idea of your 1 rep max. Now, an easy way of doing this, if you know you've got I've done 5 reps at this weight and it was pretty much near the limit, you can use that and use a 1 rep max calculator to work out what your 1 rep max is. So base all your percentages off that. So the easy way of doing it is to literally work in an 80 to 90% range. Doesn't really matter sort of where in that range. You can change it from week to week. You know, so long as you're in that range, which I call a sweet spot for building strength, and you work up to 1 set that's heavy, and say you can do 5 reps with a weight. Now, I'm not saying go to complete failure. Always save a rep back, because going to complete failure, you generally don't recover from it very well. So I would say that work up to a 5 rep max with 1 rep in reserve. And like I said, it's going to be different from week to week, and then do 3 sets after that at 85% of that weight. So for argument's sake, let's say your bench press, you managed to do 5 reps with 100 kilos. You could do 1 more rep if you had to. You've saved 1 rep in reserve. You would then do 3 sets of the same number of reps at 85% of that weight. So you would do 5 reps on 100. You would then do afterwards 3 sets of 5 with 85% of that, which would be 85 kilos. Makes the maths nice and easy for me using 100 kilos. Now, the simple way to obviously work the percentage out is to just take the weight that you've done, divide it by 100, times it by 85. That's the weight that you're then going to do your 3 following sets afterwards to get your volume in. So you're doing 1 hard set and then 3 easier sets, but that volume will obviously help you improve. And on top of that, it will also help you learn the movement. So strength training is not just about pushing your muscles close to failure. It's also about practicing movements and working at that 85% of your whatever set you've done is going to help you practice the technique, but also get the volume that you need. For me, this is the simplest way. Like I said, 1 week you could pick 80% of your 1 rep max, go to within, literally just work up to 1 heavy set to within 1 rep of failure. So to a point where you know you could do 1 more rep, stop there, and then do 85% of that for 3 sets of the same number of reps as what you've done. Now, like I said, 1 week you could do 80%, next week you could go, oh, I want to do 87.5%. You know, it can change from week to week. This also is a good way of doing it because it eliminates the variable. So if people are shift workers, you're not going to feel 100% all the time. If you've had weird shifts, or if perhaps sometimes your diet can't be as good as you'd like it to be because of work or commitments, if you're someone that has days where you just feel not as good, if you're sticking to a rigid periodization that's based on percentages, there's always a chance that you might have a bad day. Now, for someone who's very structured and very rigid with everything they do, you shouldn't get much variable in performance. But for someone who's a shift worker, works really long hours, gets overtime every now and then, perhaps can't stick to their diet, maybe they've got a young kid that wakes them up at night, so their sleep's not quite as good. This is a great way of doing it because it's always based on how you feel that day. So, you know, what might be, you know, 1 week you might do 5 reps at 100 kilos. The next week you might struggle to do 4 because you've had a tougher time that week. So you're always working to what you're capable of that day. And I do think it's a good way to manage your training, so you don't have that expectation, I have to hit 5 reps at this percentage today, because sometimes you just have bad days. Now, doing it this way, you will always sort of just base it on how you feel on that specific day, and you'll then do your set, and then also on top of that, you'll then get the volume in with the drop down sets at 85% of that weight. For me, this is like, couldn't be more simple. I hope I'm making sense of it for everyone, because I do tend to waffle a little bit. So yeah, just pick a weight between 80 to 90% of your 1 rep max, work to within 1 rep of failure. Whatever number of reps you get, take 85% of that weight that you've done this set at, do the same number of reps 3 times, and that's your compound movements done. It's a great way of periodizing your compound movements, and like I said, always structure in some deloads, because that is going to be crucial. I think a lot of people don't deload enough, but you've got to listen to your body on that side of things. And like I said, when you're picking the weights, if you have a bad day and you only get, you know, 1 or 2 reps less than you would normally get on that weight, just because you haven't eaten well, haven't slept well, etc., it doesn't matter, because you're still getting the work in and you're going to where your strength is at on that specific day. Then getting the extra practice work in to practice the movements and get your body used to doing those movements, and that way it eliminates that feeling of failure, because it's all based on how you feel that day. Anyway, like I said, that is probably the simplest way that you could periodize your strength training. Hope that helps. And obviously I would still factor in some hypertrophy blocks at times to help build some muscle. Like I said on the previous video, maybe when you finish the season, it's worth doing a hypertrophy block to build some muscle, let the joints recover, cut the compounds out maybe. But this is a good way of programming your strength training. Obviously, if you're going to peak, that's something different, and that video is coming soon.